We're going to take our time today. As I told you, I really don't know how long this is going to take. As long as it gets done within 2 hours. And we surely want to wish a blessing on Marge and George today as they travel to the south for a family gathering in this harsh weather that's upon us today. May Yahweh protect them in all ways. Now, here we are in Genesis 29, and we're going to go to verses 30 to 35. And it states thus. Now we're talking in the time here of Jacob, who was surnamed Israel. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 more years, or with Laban. And when Yahweh saw that Jacob hated Leah, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. He closed the womb of Rachel. Yahweh saw that there was resentment and hate by Jacob against his first wife, okay? And thus, what had happened is that Yahweh said, okay, I'm going to open up the womb, which means he's going to allow her to have children, and because you hate her. But for the one that you love, only because of a fleshly love and desire, I'm going to close her womb. Rachel. And that's what Yahweh did. Now, and in verse 32, and Leah conceived, and she bare a son, or an offspring seed, and she called his name Reuben. And Reuben means, see a son. See a son. She bare a son. For she said, surely Yahweh has looked upon my affliction. What affliction was that? She was hated by Jacob. Jacob didn't like her. He liked her enough to lay with her, but other than that, he didn't like her. So no one's perfect. Only Yahweh's perfect. And as great as Jacob was, he wasn't perfect either. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. He said, my gosh, I bared him a son. I'm sure he's going to love me now. And she conceived again, and she bare another son or seed, and said, because Yahweh has heard that I was, what? Hated. He has therefore given me this son also, and she called his name Simeon. And Simeon means hearing. Now, you got to understand, Leah was in a real predicament here. She was the wife of Jacob, and Jacob didn't like her. He hated her. And Yahweh knew that he hated her. But he didn't hate her enough not to lay with her. And now she's got 2 sons. And that was the pride of everything, that the what? The wife was to bear a son for the husband. Is this correct? That the name of Israel would continue in the earth. That's what it's all about. Well, let's go to verse 34. And she conceived again. Boy, he really hated her. And she bare another son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined with me. Still he's pushing her away. This is the 3rd son. Because I have borne him 3 sons, therefore his name shall be called Levi, which means joined, yes. That's very important. And she conceived again and bare another son. And she said, now will I praise Yahweh. Therefore she called his name Judah, which means praise. And she left from bearing at that time, or stood from bearing. Now the Lion of Judah. Here we have the first entry of that name, Judah, for the format that we're laying here today, for the discoursement and the transformation of information here. It's very important. as we come before Yahweh today. And remember, as we gather here, we're the so-called oddballs of society, because we will not conform with what's going on around us, or with the lies of history, or the lies of finance, or the lies of religion, or the lies of politics. We have become the modern heretics of this ungodly system that we are forced to live in on a daily basis. We are the rebels, or the heretics against evil. Thus, that's what they call us. But we stand with Yahweh, which is truth. We're the truth light bearers, is what we are. Now, this is where you will first find the name of Judah. Chapter 29, 35, verse of Genesis is where Judah first comes into the historical lineage of Chronicles relating to our people. It's very important because this is the line of Judah. He was the fourth-born son of Leah, who was hated by Jacob. Is this correct? This is right. Now, we're going to move right along here in our study, and we're going to go to Genesis 38. And as we go to Genesis 38, we are going to go to verses 1 through 30. This is the entire chapter. And why am I going to read the whole chapter? I have to read the whole chapter to lay the foundation of understanding, to put everything into the approximate order. Not just 2 verses, 4 verses. So we're going to start at verse 1 of chapter 38 of Genesis. And it states, "And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned to a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira." Hira would be what you classify a Jew today in America or anywhere. "And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her." That means he laid with her. And he knew better. He knew better because his father was who? Jacob. Judah knew better than to lay with this mongrel bitch, is what he did. Now let's listen up. Verse 3, "And she conceived, and she bare a son, and she called his name And she conceived again, and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet conceived again, and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Shizib when she bare him." That is very important. Here you had Judah, and you'll see why it's important in the disgrace that he put upon Jacob. He put the disgrace upon Jacob's wife, his mother, Leah. Because here it is very evident that Judah is a race mixer. And you'll see why it's even worse than any of the other tribes or sons of Jacob as to why he did this. And you'll find in this earth today, the majority of the race mixing of the lineage blood of Judah is from the Scots, the Irish, and the Germans that have mixed their blood with other races, just like Judah has done. It's very important, because Yahweh said there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing happening today that hasn't happened before. A lot of people say, "Oh, I take that as an insult." You can take it anywhere you want. You can take it to the bank. You can go to the bakery with it. I really don't care. I just told you the truth. The greatest race mixers are the women and men of Scottish, Irish, and German ancestry among our race in the earth. Well, let's continue. Verse 6. "And Judah took a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of Yahweh, and Yahweh slew him. Didn't want to lay with her. He went out and destroyed his seed, and Yahweh slew him. But Yahweh slew him for another reason. He had another, shall we say, another job for Tamar to perform. Tamar was of our race. She was a purebred woman of our race, and Judah was going to have his mongrel son of Canaanitish blood of Judah lay with Tamar and to pollute Tamar. Judah was a drunkard. He was a hell of a warrior, but he loved to drink wine and play around. Nothing different today from the Scots, the Irish, and the Germans. You go in all these bars in this country and see how many percent, the greater and far greater percent of the drunkards in America is of German and Irish and Scottish ancestry. I'm just telling you like it is. Fact. That's what it's all about. They call it a chip off the old block. Or they say that the apple hasn't, what? Fallen far from the tree. Well, let's read on. Verse 8. And then Judah said to Onan, go in unto your brother's wife and marry her and raise up seed to your brother. Here's Judah again, playing his games, taking the other bastard son, the mamzer mongrel, telling him to go to Tamar, who's a pure-blooded daughter of Yahweh, and mongrelize with her. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased Yahweh, wherefore Yahweh slew him too. Yahweh killed him. Praise Yahweh. Kill all these damn mongrels. Praise Yahweh. Judah wouldn't do it. And I'm surprised, I was very surprised that as I read this lineage of history, that Jacob is allowing this to happen. Think about it. But you see, everyone's responsible for themselves. You're not responsible for your children. Don't lay there and weep and sleep and slop and everything else over your children. If they're growing and they're adults, they're responsible for their own actions. And don't tell me that they can't come to these studies and learn, or they can't sit at a table and listen to the wisdom that comes from your mouth. It's because they're rebellious and they don't want to. Just like Yahweh said. Well, verse 11. And then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain in a widow at your father's house till Selah my son is grown up. Because Selah, the thirdborn, that little mongrel snake that he had with that Canaanitish woman, which you call a Jew today, was just a little boy, was a little snake. He said, you go back and live with your father until he grows up, and then you belong to him, and you're going to have children with him. He still hasn't got it, see? He still is in the perpetration of mongrelizing the seed of our people. This is not a happy thing here. This is very displeasing in the eyes of Yahweh, because Yahweh's already killed 2 of his sons. Think about it now. And do you think Yahweh's happy today? In America, Canada, all the white Western European nations of the world, South Africa, Rhodesia, New Zealand, you think Yahweh's happy with the disgorgement of the miscegenation and the mixing of blood? No, he's not. Okay, he tells her in verse 11, go to your father's house till Selah my little son be grown, for he said, lest peradventure he die also as his brothers did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Now in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto the sheep shearers in Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. Now isn't this interesting? Now you go into the book of Jasher and into the book of Jubilee, and you'll find out that Judah had a problem here, okay? The daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. Judah was perplexed. He went and got some wine, and he got drunk, and he went up to the sheep shearers. I know it's not in Genesis, but everything isn't in Genesis. You got to go to Jasher. You got to go to the book of Jubilees. You've got to search to prove yourself worthy of understanding. And he's up there sucking down wine. I don't know if it's Ripple. I don't know if it's Mogan David. Maybe it's Mogan David with the 6-pointed star, since he interbred and mongrelized with this Canaanitish bitch. Maybe he's drinking Mogan David. But he's up there and he's got a buzz on. Because Judah liked to drink and he liked to fight. That's two things, and he liked to play around. That's Judah. Those were the things he liked most. Well, let's read on and see what happens here. Verse 13, and it was told to Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law Judah goeth up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off from her, covered her with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way going to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was growing. Shelah was growing. Now this is very, very, very important, okay? The sun was growing. Years had gone by here. Shelah was growing, and Tamar knew what was going to happen. What was going to happen? That Judah was going to tell Tamar to come back and sleep with Shelah, who was a mamzer, who was a bastard, and have offspring. Tamar was a purebred. Because she saw that Shelah was growing, and she was not given unto him to wife. And when Judah saw her sitting on the wayside, he's sucking down his Mogan David, okay? He's got a buzz. He thought her to be a harlot because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. Hey, baby, I got a little buzz here, and you look pretty nice. I can't see your face, but I don't really care, you know, because I just like to jump every now and then and have this, you know, and I like to fight and drink and have women, and I really don't know you, and I can't even see what you look like, and I really don't care because I'm all boozed up. Just like the boys in the bar today. After 5, 6, 7 beers, that ugliest woman in the bar looks like Marilyn Monroe sitting there. Well, let's read on. For he knew not that it was his daughter-in-law, and she said, What will you give me, that you may come in unto me, that you may lay with me and seduce me? What are you going to give me? And Judah said, I will send you a kid from the flock. In other words, I'll give you a little goat. And she said, what? Will you give me a pledge till you send it? In other words, she said, what are you going to give to me now until I get this little kid from the flock, this little goat? You're going to give me something to make sure that your deal's going to be fulfilled here. See? Like an IOU. Like an IOU. And he said, what pledge shall I give you? And she said, the signet that you're wearing around your neck, which is the crystal of the tribe of Judah. All the sons of Jacob had it. And your bracelets. I want your bracelets too. And the staff that you have in your hand, because everyone had a staff not only for walking in that. What was that a staff also used for? War and fighting and protection. Like cane fighting. Later cane fighting become of that. Okay? Cane fighting was an art. Some canes had pistols in them. Some canes had a knife at the end. Okay? And the staff that is in your hand, so he gave it to her. So he gave her what? The signet, the bracelets, and his staff. Is this correct? And he came into her, he seduced her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and she laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. Tamar is a pretty smart lady. At least she had enough common sense of wanting pure seed. See what I'm talking about? And she knew that Judah was held very high in the house of Jacob Israel, even though he did this dastardly thing, that a covenant had already been given to Judah from Abraham. Okay, let's read on. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend, the Adullamite. So in other words, Judah went and got a kid from the flock. And he's going to send the kid with his friend now, this little goat, to fulfill the pledge, the deed, and then get his what? His signet, his bracelets, and his staff back. Okay? That was being held as an IOU for having you to her. And to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. She wasn't there. And then he asked the men of that place, saying, well, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside here? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. We don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody here. And he returned to Judah, Judah the man, not Judah the landmass, tribe mass yet, and said, I can't find her. And also the men of the place said, there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said to her in verse 23, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I send this kid, and you have not found her? He said, my God, you're going to bring shame on me. Bring shame on him? He had already brought shame on himself by having 3 bastard sons from the Canaanitish woman. Verse 23. 24. And it came to pass about 3 months after that, that it was told to Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. And behold, she is with a child by whoredom. See, she's starting to show. And Judah said, bring her forth and let her be burned. Because, see, that's what they did. They lit a big fire, and they threw the woman on the fire. How many women you think, how big of a fire you think we'd have to have in this country to take care of that problem? Pretty big one, don't you think? I bet we have to cut a lot of trees down. Yeah. Okay, let's read on. Well, we won't get into that one right now. Verse 25. And she was brought forth, and she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, am I with a child? And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these? And there was the signet, the bracelets, and the staff. And Judah acknowledged them. Why? Well, because they were his. And he said, she has been more righteous than I. Because that I gave her not to Selah my son, and she knew her again. He knew her again no more. He admitted that she was more righteous than him, laying with him to have a baby, than he was for the mongrolization that he did having those bastard children. Oh, but you go in these restaurants today in the United States and all over, and you see grandma coming in now, 55, 60 years old, and she's got this little niglet with her. Okay? And she's got this little niglet, and she's coming in, and she's so happy. And everybody in the restaurant's looking at the little niglet. Oh, isn't that a cute little baby? Oh. And there's that little burr head, okay? The little burr head, this little niglet, and you can tell what it is. And everyone is just so happy, instead of scorning this woman, that her daughter went out and polluted her womb to have this mongrel child. Because 40, 50 years ago, there wouldn't be a grandma bringing a niglet into a restaurant. There would be shame. But you see how far this country's come. And this is also taking place in Germany and all over the white nations of the earth because of Judeo-Christianity teaching everyone that it doesn't matter what color of skin you are or who you are. We're all from Adam. And underneath the skin, we're all the same. But then again, if that's the truth, why do blacks have sickle cell? Only blacks get sickle cell if we're all the same. Why do Jews get Tay-Sachs disease if we're all the same? Whites, the white race, can't get sickle cell or Tay-Sachs unless you've had a blood transfusion or unless you had foreign blood that is entered into your body. Common sense and logic, see? Well, let's read on. Where are we at? 27. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand They were trying to get out. Okay, there's twins in there. There's not much room in there, right? And it's time for her to give birthing. It's called giving birthing. And it says here in 27, behold, there were twins, and it came to pass when she travailed that one put his hand out of his mother's womb. And the midwife took and bound upon his hand around his wrist. What did she tie? A scarlet thread, saying, this one come out first. 29. And it came to pass as he drew his hand back in, he brought his hand back in his mother's womb. He's got a little thread around it now, a scarlet thread, right? His brother came out whole. And she said, how have you broken out? What are you doing coming out of here? The other one was coming out, and I tied a thread around his hand. He brought his hand in. All of a sudden, the other one come out. She said, how have you come out instead of him? This breach be upon thee. Therefore, his name was called Pharez, which means a breach. Because in the original Hebrew, it's numerical and descriptive. Okay, the language is numerical and descriptive in Hebrew. Every name had a meaning. And we carried that as a race, even out of the Babylonian, the Assyrian bondage, heading westward into Europe, the names, cobbler, okay, shoemaker. Heck, I've even known people called their last name shoemaker. Guess what they made when years had gone by? It was a shoemaker. I mean, isn't that hard? Isn't that difficult? Okay, and verse 30. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Now they're twins. And Judah had these pure-blooded boys, twins, Pharez and Zara. Zara came out with a thread around his wrist. The midwife said, oh, this one come out first. He's entitled to the kingship, the lineage of Judah. And the other people said, no, no. Pharez was born whole first. He is to be the king of Judah. You're talking the kingship for the rulership of the earth. Earth being the pure offsprings of Judah. Now, this is so important because as I'm in this course here, and I could stay here for a long time, but I just can't because of time. If don't go there, but in Luke chapter 3, when you go to Luke chapter 3, and we will be going there, you'll notice that Judah had 3 sons by this Canaanitish woman, right? And the firstborn is always to get what? The inheritance. Is this right? You will not find those 3 names mentioned in the pure genealogy of the kingship, priesthood of Israel in chapter 3 of the book of Luke. This is very important. And you will not find Zara's name there either, but you will find Pharez. And Pharez was selected as the firstborn. Zara resented it. Zara always said, I'm the firstborn. I deserve to be ahead of the tribe of Judah, the king lineage of the Jacob Israel. There was terrible between the Zerahites and the Pharezites, or the descendants of Pharez and Zara. There was a great, what would you call it, calamity of jealousy complex, right? Now, people say, well, what happened then? Well, boy, this is getting interesting. How did they go to war against each other? Or what did they do? Did they live together? They couldn't live together. It was so great. The animosity was so great. The bitterness was so great, they could not live by each other. And when our race came out of Egypt, out of bondage under Moses, years ago, that's when the Zerahites split off. They split off from all of Israel, and they went down into what you call an area down in Spain. And from Spain, of course, we'll talk about that. They went to Ireland and Scotland. Okay? Now, why is this important? It's very important, because everything is for you to know and to understand. And the lineage of Judah, which is the royal tribe of the house of Jacob, Israel, it says that Abraham had a covenant with Yahweh, and many kings would come out of the loins of Abraham, handed down to Isaac and to Isaac's offspring. Many kings of many nations would take place. The Jews never had nations. They never had kings. They never had any land. They were wanderers and nomads as the curse was put on them until they stole the land from the Palestinians in 1947 through the Balfour Declaration. Now we're entering another level here of understanding, and there's so much here I can't cover all that I want to cover because we would sit here for 2 days. Okay? But it's all wonderful. And it all has to be put into the proximity of understanding is what this is all about. Now, we know here that a covenant was made with Abraham. Is this correct? A covenant was made with Abraham. Was it a perpetual covenant? It was a covenant to be forever. Is this correct? And a promise was made that he would change his name from Abram, singular, to Abraham, plural, because many kings and people and a multitude of nations would come from the ancestry, from the loins offspring of Abraham. Is this right? This is right, right? Right. Now we realize that as Abram and Sarai had Isaac in turn, because we've also read that this covenant would be handed down to Isaac. Did we read that? And to his offspring forever. Did we read that? Okay, we bound that. Now we got back in, and we got back in with the birth of Judah, the fourth son of Leah. Is this correct? Jacob's wife. Is this correct? And now from Judah, the fourth-born son of Leah, we have gone in and we have what? We have circumvented and we have isolated that Judah laid with Tamar and brought forth 2 children, Pharez and Zara. Is this correct? Correct. And that Zara had a scarlet string tied around his wrist, and there's a dispute here as to the firstborn, which is very important because all of the power goes to the firstborn according to the law of Yahweh. Is this correct? Correct. Okay. This is where we're at right now. Very important. They tell you that all these tribes of Israel are lost. God lost his children. That's what they're telling you. The Jews are Judah. Okay? We're God's chosen, you know. But Almighty Yahweh, who created the earth, he created the air, he created ice and snow. He opened up the treasures of heaven, as the prophet and patriarch Enoch writes about. He forgot 10 tribes of his kids. You don't know where they're at. When he says, I know how many hairs are on your head and when a bird falls out of its nest. Yahweh's not lost. Our race is lost because of Judeo-Christianity and religion, which is controlled by the Jews of the world today. All religions. This is the problem. It's not that you think Yahweh, who knows everything, has lost his children. No. Yahweh, who is perfect in all ways, has lost 10 tribes of his children. Can you imagine this? Now, what kind of a so-called God would lose 10 tribes of his children on the earth when he created the earth, and he said he knew them before they were in their mother's womb, before the foundations of the earth? And the people sit there and they buy these lies. They listen to these lies and they believe them. Yahweh hasn't lost his people. Yahweh's people have lost Yahweh. And when you want to tell them about it, they get very abusive. They get very nasty sometimes. And here you are giving them a wonderful mystery, telling them the most beautiful truth in the world, not only who Yahweh is, but who they are. That they're a daughter of Yahweh, that they're a son of Yahweh, that we are, i.e. the chosen people on the earth. Oh, we get up and say, we, the racial covenant identity people, We are Yahweh's people on the earth. We are the kings and the princes of the lineage of Abraham and the covenant that was given to Abraham upon this earth. Oh, they say, oh, you're a supremacist. You're a white supremacist. You're a hater. And then the Jew gets up and says, oh, we're the supremacists. We're God's chosen people. With their little faggot voice. And everyone says, oh yeah, we'll let the Jews be the supremacists. We'll let them be God's chosen people. And we'll be the dirtballs. And we'll let them rob us. And we'll let them teach their mongrolization. We'll let them steal our money system. We'll let them take and send our boys and daughters, their sons and daughters, to undeclared wars for the Jews in the Mideast or where they are or do what they are. We'll let them feed all these chemicals in our food to us and make us sterile and all blah, 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 blah. And we'll let the Jews who perpetrated the mind thought of abortion clinics, we'll let them take and abort 40 million of our babies and children in America alone, not counting all of Western Europe, nor counting Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Rhodesia. We'll let them do that.